What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Sorry for the wait. This will be worth the wait because this is going to be a very good video and a turning point in a lot of y'all's trading careers, because that's what it was for me when I learned this concept, and I gave it time to integrate this in my system, etc. Once I learned more about it, it really changed the way I view the market and how I filter price, etc. And that is with the concept precision swing points, or PSP for shorts. This is a concept founded by Intraday. Yes, this is a quarterly theory concept. I do trade quarterly theory, but a very dumbed down version and simpler version of it. I do not use the majority of quarterly theory concepts. Today, I will be showing you how I use precision swing point. So let's get into it. So what is a precision swing point? It is a swing point, right? But it is not just a swing point, it is also a Kraken correlation, right? So as these assets create a candle 2, right, where they close back within candle 1's range, right? We all know what a candle 2 is. The difference in closes is the Kraken correlation, right? They're going to close in opposing directions, right? So this is when both assets reach into some relevant level. Asset 1 closes bullish. Asset 2, the correlated market, closes bearish. It's as simple as that, right? So when I tell you that anyone can apply this concept with little to no added confusion or layer of complexity, right? It's seriously something that any trader can use at any level, right? And it'll greatly benefit your trading, right? Because the market cannot reverse without a swing point, right? That is the whole logic behind T-Trade's model and T-Trade's approach to the market. It's very logical, right? You go to any reversal, retracement, there's always a swing point, right? So why not require a swing point and confirm that swing point, right? That's why the fractal model is so good. But the market also cannot reverse without SMT. So why not require SMT, right? And that's where the precision swing point has both of them built into it. So it's a swing point and a Kraken correlation. That's why it's so good. So now let's get into some different variations of a precision swing point. So here is a precision swing point, right, where there's a Kraken correlation between candle 1 and candle 2, right? And the PSP close itself confirms that Kraken correlation, right? And this can be used on any time frame. This can be the daily time frame, the 15-minute time frame, the hourly time frame. Doesn't matter, right? So this is what is called a two-stage PSP. Now, there's other words for this. I think it's precision candle. I'm not really sure. I actually learned this from a trader, an educator, mentor named Jacob Speculates. He's also a quarterly theory trader. I would highly recommend checking him out. Learned a lot from him. So that's also credits to him for this as well. I want to give credits to this. Almost all of this they're not my concepts, right? The way I trade it is like the fractal model, though, right? So I trade it a lot different than quarterly theory traders. I trade a lot different than quarterly theory traders, but I use the same concepts, right? So some of the same concepts. So now let's get into the next type of precision swing point. And it's essentially the same thing, but a Kraken correlation between candle 2 and candle 3, right? So this is where we do not have SMT between candle 1 and candle 2, but we have a PSP, right? And the PSP is confirmed by the SMT, right? So it's swapped, right, from the last one we just saw. And this is also a two-stage PSP. So if you had to rank, I guess probabilities, right, you would have PSP. Well, I guess you would have a swing formation as the least probable. You would have a PSP as the next probable, highest probable. And then you would have one of these versions as the next highest probable PSP, right? Because obviously, a swing formation, there's no SMT, right? A PSP is one Kraken correlation. This is a two-stage Kraken correlation, right? So it's the highest probable swing formation possible, essentially, right? And I will show you guys sequences in a part 2. So this is just part 1. Just going to be showing you guys PSPs and how to apply them with framework. And then we'll get into profiling and sequences in a part 2. So what is another version of two-stage PSP? It is a continuation PSP. Again, there might be another version or name for this. I just call it continuation PSP. This is essentially where after a true reversal or after a reversal, we expand away. In that expansion, right, this is where we create this two-stage PSP where one asset creates a swing point or a candle two where the other one does not, right? So a lot of people are going to get confused. They're going to trade this wrong. They're going to think this is a PSP to go higher, right? Because you have a PSP, a candle two at the lows. But really, this is just used for a tracement, right? And the SMT here is essentially used and is the trigger for expansion, right? We'll get into some examples that may be confusing, but it's essentially an SMT between candle 1 and candle 2 where the SMT confirms the PSP. Now let's get into where do we apply swing points or precision swing points, and that is always within narrative, right, or framework, right? So what are the three frameworks we use? Internal to external, external to internal, and order pairing ranges, right, where we manipulate one side of the range and distribute in the opposing side of the range. So let's go and add these two together. What does that look like? So for an internal to external model, this is when price hits this key level, right? And the candle that hits the engaged with that key level actually forms a precision swing point, right? So this gives us a hint that we can reverse. Now, when can you anticipate a two-stage PSP? Well, you can anticipate a two-stage PSP when the PSP candle itself, right, on the, let's say the lagging asset or the weakest asset, when you're bullish like this, is closing as an expansion candle, right? Because now this candle here is opening near this candle's low, right? So it's very close to proximity where it can take it out, right? And if this candle didn't reverse, then we must reverse off of this candle's low, which then creates the SMT, which creates a two-stage PSP, right? So it's a very high probable model here, right? So when can you anticipate one cracking correlation where it's just a PSP, right? So here is we engage with external range liquidity, right? We form a C2. It's not just any C2 swing formation. It's a PSP, right? Because this asset over here is bearish. This asset over here is bullish, right? So we can expect candle 3 to expand lower, right? Why can we anticipate this high not being rated? Well, because the weakest asset is actually closing a reversal candle, right? So this candle reverses, then this asset doesn't really need to, take out this high, right? Now let's get into order pairing ranges, right? This is, again, when a PSP is created when we engage with something relevant, right? We can't just trade any PSP everywhere. It's not that good. You know what I'm saying? No concept is that good. You got to have context, right? So here we engage with a range low, failure swings on the opposing side of the range, SMT with that range low, right? The candle itself that hit this range low and created the SMT is a PSP. And again, look at the candle close on the weakest asset. It's an expansion candle. So we can expect this candle to run out this candle's low, right? Creating an SMT, which is that two-stage PSP. And you always want to trade the assets that is creating that failure swing, right? Obviously, this one's stronger, right? Because it has the higher time frame SMT, but also has that failure swing SMT with candle 2 and candle 3. Well, this asset is actually creating a candle 2. Now let's get into some more ways we can anticipate PSPs, and that's some more ways we can utilize PSP, and that's with phases of price, right? Where the trigger for a new phase is a PSP. So here we have what's the trigger for expansion? A PSP, right? Price expands away. What is the trigger for a retracement, right? We know the market goes from expansion to retracement once we have a PSP after 3 consecutive expansion candles, or just expansion into a relevant level to the left. If we put in a PSP, we can assume that we can retrace, right, back into maybe IRL or EQ of this range, right? When we do retrace to that level, if you get a PSP, this can be the trigger for price to go from retracement to expansion, right, into external range of liquidity. Once you reach this high, we know we can get a new phase of price. So if you get a PSP, right, that could be a reversal signature from price to go from expansion into the high to reversal into the range low. And again, we're not covering profiling. We're not covering sequence. I'm giving you one sequence, right, because I feel nice. So here is a very, very good sequence, right? It is strength switch PSP, right? So this is a concept that I came up with, and this is a concept that's really changed my trading as well. And I will go over this concept in depth, probably in SMT part 2, and then as strength switching, how to actually utilize it. So as we see here, this is a PSP, right? But it's not just any PSP. It is a strength switch PSP because this asset that ran the high is the strongest asset. So it should be closing bullish, but it's closing bearish, right? So what is that? That is a strength switch. So this can be used as a universal model on any time frame, literally any time frame, as a two-stage SMT, right? For this asset right here that's running the high, that's your first stage SMT. Your second stage SMT is the PSP, but it's also that strength switch, which is very important, right? If you've seen my video or my SMT video part 1. So that is it for the slides. Let's get into some examples. I do have a lot, so I'm going to try to go through them fast, so hopefully you can follow along. So here we are on the weekly chart, right? We can use this on any time frame, right? So what do we see here? We see that the last couple of weeks on this middle chart, which is oil, right, CL, has ran into the swing low, creating an SMT. So when we trade into a swing low, what can we expect? A new phase of price potentially, right? But look at this candle closure here. What do we see on the right asset? It's actually bullish. So what can this, what can we anticipate really? A new phase of price, right? So what do we also notice is that this asset over here, HO, if this asset is opening near this low, you see how it gaps lower? So obviously we're really close to this low. You can already anticipate an SMT forming there. So when it does, that is a two-stage cracking correlation, right? You can expect this asset that runs a low to, reverse off that previous candle's low, and then these assets to all expand. What model is this? External, right? Market trades into this low with SMT. Where can we trade? Back into internal range liquidity, right? So hopefully that one makes sense. Now let's get into some examples, right? And here I'm really going to showcase you how there is a SMT at every single retracement and reversal in the market. That is not an exaggeration. So let's get into some of this PA here. So first, I want to go over some of this PA here, right? Some of this PA here. Let's start here, right? Why not right here? What do we notice here is that we have a PSP here, right? Look at this bearish close. Look at this bullish close. But what is this specifically, right? Is that little secret gem that I just told you guys about in the sequence, that last slide? This is a strength switch PSP. Why? Let's mark out this low or this high over here on YM. As you see, this just got traded into on the 23rd. If you mark out that same high on NQNES, we can clearly see this asset got hit, or this high got hit a long time ago. So that is a failure to manipulate. This is when we know that the lagging asset should catch up to essentially break that SMT or trade into the same high. That is asset synchronization. What is the trigger for that? A strength switch, right? So this here, it's a PSP. It's basically a bullish PSP to gain strength to catch up to NQ and ES, right? Now if you look here, what is this type of PSP? As you see, this is a bearish candle, this is a bullish candle, this is a bearish candle, right? So what do we see here? Is that this is really just used for retracement. So why would this be used for retracement likely? Well, this is where context comes in. Well, for one, let's look at that weekly candle, right? It's an expansion candle. That's for one, right? And two, if you look here, if we go into the actual charts here, right? Does this look like a reversal to you? No, right? This is consolidation on these two assets. So this likely is just a retracement on YM, as it is the lagging asset, the weakest asset, right? So what could cap off that retracement is a First off, a key level, right? And also some form of SMT, right? So here is a continuation PSP. Why? Because here you have a PSP. Here you have an SMT with that previous candle's low, right? Where YM actually reverses off that low. As we can see, 10 a.m. reversal off of that low. And yeah, that is just a really good example there. What forms the low of the day here? This is something I actually traded, right? If you look here, this is getting a little messy. I apologize. Let's remove all this stuff here. And some of these are really going to get messy because I really just want to show you guys like how this is just everywhere, right? So this is not going to be the most organized video. You guys know my videos are not like that. My videos are kind of just everywhere. I just start yapping for real. But here, we can see that this candle here is a bullish close. This one is a bearish close, right? That forms that two-stage SMT. So as soon as YM runs that low, you can trade NQ into the high. So these are things I'm waiting for every single day. Every single day, I'm waiting for these type of sequences. I know exactly when candles should be ran out, right? So this adds a very strong level of price filtering, right? I don't just trade swing points anywhere and everywhere. I'm really waiting for these type of sequences that I will show you guys soon, right? But now I'm showing you the very basically level one, right? So that is a continuation PSP here, right? This is where that Friday closes. That was Friday, by the way. And then this next day opens higher first. So we can expect a new phase of price. Why? Because that previous week is an expansion candle, right? So we essentially have like 2 weeks of expansion, right? This asset just hit a high. This is also a sequence that I've showed on Twitter where the lagging asset will hit a high, right? As soon as it breaks the SMT, where these other assets, leading assets, have been taken out that high, right? This is a reversal sequence or a tracing sequence where the lagging asset breaks the SMT and then price reverses, right? So when would we reverse or when we have some down move? It's early on in the week, right? This is when I always say that Monday can be very, very one-sided because if we're going to reverse, we would do it early on in the week, right? We would just reverse off the previous week's high because we're opening near it, right? So we would form that small wick either on Monday or Tuesday and reverse back in the range. And even if we're going to continue higher, we would also open low first, generally. That's how a bullish candle forms. So either way, you can be bearish on Monday in this case, right? And that's a lot of the times. I trade Mondays every single week, and I trade it very successfully. So here you see the market just gaps up, right? There's another reason why we can trade lower because the daily opens higher first, right? If you see my candle profiling video, we know that, right? But also, we have this gap to fill in, right? So there's logic to trade lower, right? That's the important part. There's actual logic to trade lower. Now, what did I just say about SMT breaking? What do we have here, guys? And this is shit that no one will fucking teach you. Like the strength switch PSP, this, like, I promise you, like, I personally didn't learn it from anyone. I don't know if anyone teaches this. Maybe they do. My bad if they do. I don't know. But these are things I've discovered through my own trading and experience and whatnot, my studies, is when SMT breaks, right? So we just saw it on the daily or the weekly, whatever. Now you're going to see it here on the 4 hour, right? This was once an SMT, as you see, but when it breaks, when YM breaks SMT, this is when the market reverses. So this is one of the reversal sequences that I actually use every single day, right? I have a bunch of reversal sequences. But this is also a strength switch PSP, right? What forms the high of the day here is a 30-minute PSP, right? And what forms the high of that 2 a.m. 4 hour candle is that PSP. So GxT, you know that we frame or profile a 4 hour candle with 1 hour and 30-minute swings. So I don't really have to tell you, what is the next video. You can kind of figure it out, right? What do we have at the opposing side of this? It's a bunch of failure swings, right? But as soon as you break that SMT, right, we know that this asset's the weakest, right? Because it got to the high, the latest, right? But here we have a bullish close on NQ where we failed to manipulate this high a long time ago, indicating strength. We actually close bearish. So that's that strength switch PSP that I'm talking about. That is so powerful. So this could have been a London reversal, right? Makes a lot of sense to trade back to the gap. So that's an example there, right? Now later in New York session, you're going to see that we also get some more opportunities, right? So if you look at that 4-hour candle close here, right? It's kind of a shit close, right? And here we see that NQ is the strongest asset, so it's like retracing while the other ones are expanding, as you see. But so you can already anticipate what's going to happen here is, is actually an SMT forming with this 4-hour high, right? Because look how close this asset is to the previous 4-hour high. Look how far away these assets are, right? So you can already anticipate that happening. This is also a fair value gap, right? So essentially you can trade this from internal to external, right? Where the daily candle is opening higher first, the profile supports this New York continuation as well. And it would be an SMT fill, right? Which is another quarterly theory concept, which just simply just SMT with gaps. So this asset is going to trade into a gap, but the other ones are not going to do that. So as you see, that's what happens. Right, if you form that small wick, what forms the high of this candle is a 30-minute closure here, but it's not just any 30-minute closure, guys. What is it? It's a strength switch PSP, right? Why is it strength switch PSP, guys? Well, what do we have? We have this 30-minute closure here. The asset that runs the high is bearish closed. This asset over here that is in EQ of the range, right, that's weaker, is closing bullish, right? That is asset synchronization, right? And that is a strength switch PSP, right? So now you can trade this asset into what? That 4-hour low. Right, and that would be your trade for the day. I mean, the market's already pretty expanded, so there's really nothing else to trade this day. I believe there's like potentially another opportunity here, but as you see, there's PSPs everywhere, right? They're literally everywhere. I think there's one right here too. I mean, yeah, look, you can't make this shit up, guys. Like I said, every single retracement, every single reversal, there's some form of SMT. It's quite insane to see. It really is. So you need to start requiring these two things, is a swing point and a PSP. So that's what you see here, right? What is this as well? A strength switch PSP, right? All you quarterly theory traders, you will start using this because it's that good. So yeah, that's that, right? Now let's get into like the next day's price action, because I don't really have to go into, I can go into any day and show you this. It's everywhere. It's quite an amazing concept by Trader Day. So let's bar play this forward here. So you're going to see, again, this is asset synchronization. So look at this candle here, or look at this asset being in Q. Look at the strongest asset. It is above the high, right, prior to 9:30, as you see. So prior to 9:30, this asset is above the high, right, on the strongest asset. Well, ES is typically the middle asset, right? It's an EQ of the range. And look at YM. Look how close. Look at these engineered lows overnight, right? Look at those engineered lows. So now you have daily sequential SMT with the previous high, right? You have this asset in discount with engineered lows, right? So what would this be? This is advanced premium discount, right? Or just asset synchronization. And this is when you get this PSP, right, at 9:30. So again, we'll get into sequences, but I'll just tell you right now, the candles that create drivers, so like let's say the 8 o'clock candle with 8:30 news, let's say the 9 o'clock candle with 9:30 news, when they create a PSP, right, that's a Kraken correlation, but it's like a time-based Kraken correlation because it's like the driver creating that PSP. So as you see, it's a little bit higher probability, right? So this is a two-stage PSP. Why? Because you have an SMT between candle 1 and candle 2, where the PSP confirms that, as you see, right? So then you could trade, right, this lower into these lows, as you see. But now I want you to see what transpires after this, right? Look at NQ. What are we doing? Engineering lows, right? The profile is also bearish, guys. Why is it bearish? Because the daily opens high first. Although it is a reversal day with this large opposing run, we can expect price to still hit the previous day's low, right? Just because it's just a little bit past that daily open. But this is the trigger for that to even happen. It is this strength switch PSP. So we know that NQ is the strongest asset, but it's going to turn momentarily weaker to catch up to ES, right? So look at ES is in a gap. So essentially just expansion, engineering those lows, consolidation, prices inside barring in between one candle, price runs that high out. When it does, it's confirmed by a PSP. And look at this, guys, GxT, right? What is that new 4-hour candle opening up within? A reversal. So within that previous 4-hour candle, what did we do? We expanded, right? Because within that previous 6-hour candle, what did price do? It reversed. This is also GxT, right? Price reversed. Within that 6 a.m. candle, I'll show you here. Right, it's right here. Price reversed. Right, what is this also, guys? A 2-stage piece on the 4-hour. So again, never mind. I'll show you guys next video. But as you see, this is a 2-stage PSP. It's this candle, right? Yeah. This candle here is bearish. We close. We fail to take out candle 1's high. So what can you expect 10 a.m. to do? Is expand lower, right? But what confirms the high of 6 a.m. is that PSP, right? And 10 a.m. is opening up within that PSP. And we expand away. So within that 10 a.m. candle, we basically expand, we consolidate, and then we manipulate at the very end of that 10 a.m. candle. So if we do that at the end of that candle, right, and we still have a draw liquidity open, and that 1400 candle opens, right, it doesn't need to go and manipulate again. It just will expand because within that previous candle, we've already manipulated, right? So it'll just expand. And that's exactly what happens here, right? So again, that's another great example. So let's go ahead and move on. I don't know how much more I'm going to do of this because I don't want to run out of time here. I don't want to do my videos at an hour anymore. This is like so long. I wanted to go over a lot of this PA. You guys can study this PA here. I'll just show you real quick. Let's just look at that weekly closure. So again, strength switch PSPY. This asset here runs out this high. So the SMT here. The asset that runs at the high is closing what? A bearish PSP. This one's closing a bullish PSP. Right, so that's that strength switching that we want to see at true reversals. So you see the next week does what? Expands away. Right? I will show you some wait, is this? Yeah, I'll show you that in the next slide. But anyways, we're going to go over some of this here, this PA here. So essentially, what do we have? The previous week created SMT. So we're kind of everywhere here. My bad. Whoa, what the hell did I just do? So what do we have here? SMT at that previous week's low. But we did not reverse, right? So as you see, the previous week created SMT, but didn't reverse. So where would we reverse from? We would reverse from that candle's low, that previous candle's low, right? You can already see some strength switching going on. You got to really pay attention. So we know that this asset is the strongest asset, being gold. Why? Because it's creating the failure swing, right? But look at the wick size on this new candle. It's a lot larger when it should be a smaller because it's stronger, right? When you see the assets that ran the low is a small wick, right? Compared to gold. That is strength switching already, right? But why would we even anticipate this SMT to hold? Well, it's because of the monthly candle that we're currently within. This monthly candle that we're in is already an expansion candle, right? So when it comes down, right, all the way back to the opening price, with 10 trading days left, it's not going to. We know that price cannot expand beyond the opening price, right, of this monthly open because the wick size. We know that with this wick size, look at these wicks. They have small bodies, right? So it's gonna have a really hard time to actually expand past the open. So when you have that SMT, it's a lot more significant when the candle already supports expansion. So that's another, filtering, right? I have a lot of ways to filter price. It's not just swing points and blah, blah, SMT, right? It's candle profiling, it's phase of price, all these different type of things, right? So here, right, with that, given that, right, we see that why can we anticipate this PSP to actually hold, right? This PSP to be a continuation PSP. Well, let's kind of look at it, right? So if I bar replay here, let's mark out this high right here. Right, this is also a PSP, right? Why? Because we have an SMT here and here, right? And a bearish close. This is also a form of strength switch PSP because the asset that runs at the high should be stronger than this one, but it's closing bearish, right? So as you see, the next day expands lower. But anyways, I'm not getting into that, right? So why would we be kind of bullish this, you're kind of like favoring that PSP at the lows? Well, because look at this high here, this Monday high. Look on this asset. It fails to manipulate it. So again, we can anticipate what? This asset can actually catch up, right? So that's why you see this is viewed as more of a retracement, right? And when you see it actually run that low out, that's that, you know, two-stage piece that we see. And you can see the strength switching, right? Look how this asset is very, very strong compared to these assets. Why? Because these assets already ran out these highs. So this asset is picking up strength to actually catch up and trade into those highs. So coming to the week, we have a very easy draw on liquidity, and that would be this high, right? That the other assets fail to manipulate. So when the weekly opens low first, and the other assets just expand higher, we already know that this is just a retracement, right? What can be formed this, I guess, reversal from this gap, but also the previous candle's low, right? And that would form that two-stage SMT, right? As you see, as soon as it runs out that low, that's when the market actually reverses, right? Forming that two-stage PSP. And that would be right here, right? I'll mark it out here. This candle is bullish. We do not take out that candle's low, as you see. Now, when I zoom into some of this PA here, you're just going to see it everywhere, dude. You're going to see the same thing over and over and over. What about this PA here? Even in this PA, dude, like, if I explain this PA, you think it's going to be gross, but there's actually logic. There's strength switching in here to catch up, but I'm not getting it too deep into that. So here we are, right, on actually the 90-minute chart. So this is a quarterly theory. You know, we're just, you know, basically viewing quarters through candles. So each 90-minute candle, right, we can see that represents a quarter, right? So this is a way to view, you know, quarters, right? I don't have to use the indicator. This is taught by Jacob Speculates. So if you want to learn more about that, I would definitely highly recommend. So as you see, this candle here creates, that might be even sequential SMT. No, it's not. Okay. So this is just an SMT with a relevant low, right? This 1 hour low, essentially, right? Gets traded into, that's stage one. That's cracking correlation number one, right? But as you see this candle here, this 9 o'clock candle is bullish. When I go to these assets over here, it's bearish, right? So that's that two-stage PSP, right? Where we can expect price to expand. So why is this logical to trade higher? Well, you see this high here, it already got traded into. When I go to gold here, we do not trade into the high. So what is this? This is a strength switch for gold to catch up, to break all these SMTs, right? So if you look here, you're gonna see the same shit. It's quite amazing. So let's go to the hourly time frame now. I think it was. And I'll split the screen here. I think it was euro. Yep, it was euro. So again, strength switching. Why is it strength switching? Well, not in Q. Gold already took out this high. Euro did not take out this high, essentially. And it's kind of like they're not the same highs, but you get what I mean, right? This asset still has something to trade into. You're going to see that it actually turns into the strongest asset to trade into this high, right? To catch up to gold, right? So you're seeing that the markets, they switch strength all the time, right? And they're constantly doing this to become correlated, right? They can't always be correlated, right? There would be no cracking correlation, right? So as you see, this candle here is a PSP. It's a bearish close, but obviously we can already anticipate this SMT forming because look how close this candle is opening up near this candle, right? So you already know this asset's gonna run this low out. As soon as it runs this low out, right, you can either trade this asset as a candle 2 or this asset, you know, this is not even a swing point, right? You can just trade this candle here, right? Confirm it with the CSD or whatnot, right? And this would just be internal to external. Right? Obviously, we can't trade gold euro, so just using it as a confluence, right? This is also an SMT fill as well, which is a very high probable continuation model, which we will go over in another, I guess, part 2. I'll probably go over that in part 2. You can even see it at the reversal. So we're seeing it freaking everywhere, man. Like, look here. Let's go to GBP. What do we have here? A strength switch, 2-stage PSP. So after this expansion, what can we expect? A new phase of price, right? What do we get? So I think euro trades above here. So yeah, euro takes out this high, GBP, and gold do not, right? And this creates that strength switch, right? This asset is bullish, this asset's bearish. That is your 2-stage PSP. And as you see, price retraces back into the range. Now let's get into our final example. We're probably at an hour, but it's all good. So this is, again, that week where we saw that strength switch PSP in the weekly time frame. So here's that candle 2. We're covering candle 3 here, right? That's what we're covering. So how can we confirm that weekly, high? How can we come into a Monday and expect that expansion? Well, for one, the previous week reversed, but in more specific is the Friday candle close, right? So if you actually view this PA here, let's go over it, right? So let's just go over, let's do euro so you guys can see a little bit better. So if you actually view this price action, you're going to see some strength switching sequences, right? This is something I haven't really taught to a lot of people, but I have taught this specific reversal sequence to you guys, and it has to do with strength switching. Every type of resynchronization that I use has to do with strength switching. So as you see, at the time, what do we see here? We see an SMT between the two markets, right? There's only one thing that can happen here, right? It's this asset reverses, they both reverse essentially, right? Or there's actually multiple, we're not even getting into that, but essentially what you have here is this asset is expanding to catch up to the SMT while this asset retraces or reverses, right? And that creates a 2-stage SMT in a form of strength switching, right? Now what do you see here? The Friday close is bearish, right? See how it breaks that SMT that we talk about, that sequence? In this case, it's actually a form of strength switching in that regard. But here that Friday close is a C2 candle, but it's also a PSP, right, as we see. So what can we expect here? Since this asset is closing this high, is a 2-stage PSP. Right? When I drop lower, you're going to see a strength switch PSP form the high of the day. So here is that sequential SMT between previous high. And the candle that engages with that is a bearish candle, right? Look at that same candle over here. The asset is way in discount. It's a bullish candle. So this asset over here is switching to the weaker asset to become correlated, right? So that is strength switching, strength switch PSP. So you're seeing it everywhere, right? And when you truly understand when to use this, it is one of the most powerful concepts, in my opinion, right? So what is this model here? It's simply just, right, previous week manipulation of external range. What can we target this week? Well, we have this internal range where we have a bunch of fair swings engineered above this fair value gap, and then we can eventually target this low, right, on these assets here. And at this point, market is expanding away from the opening price. So what are we doing at this point? We are eliminating the possibility for a bullish expansion candle, right? So when we create this fair value gap, we can now assume that this fair value gap would protect the high of the week. So this fair value gap can be used for weekly continuation. So you're going to see that over here on GBP, look how close this asset is to these lows. So this PSP here, you got to use context. This PSP here is likely going to be used for what? Retracement. Why? Because it doesn't make sense to reverse from this level. I just gave you the two reasons. This asset is fair swing, so there's a reason to continue lower on this asset. but also the weekly candle doesn't support some bullish profile, right? So what can you expect to which asset to trade into the gap? You can expect gold to trade into the gap because it's the strongest asset, right? So we already know when it trades into that gap, we could actually form what? A potential two-stage PSP. Why? Because this asset is bullish, candle close. This asset is bearish. So when it trades into that, right, what do we get? That two-stage PSP actually traded this day, right? If I go to the 30-minute time frame, you're going to see what forms the high of the day? A precision swing point after it engages with this high. Ain't that something, right? And if you look here, I don't know if this, I don't remember, this is SMT or, oh yeah, it is, okay. What, I mean, it's just crazy, right? What forms the reversal here? The expansion. What are we leaving? A bunch of engineered lows, right? We have a gap to continue from. What do we have here? What is the trigger for expansion after retracement? It's this precision swing point. And you even get this sequence here, which is something that I'll teach you guys as well, which is a form of strength switching. You can already see it. I'm sure you guys can see it. Right. But yeah, so now let's go into another example, right? So this is something I did take, right? This is a reversal day. So I believe I actually TP'd here because that, first off, I'm trading the strongest asset in the trade. And that daily profile, that wick is very large, right? So we want to TP back from the daily range because the wick size doesn't support bearish expansion, right? So when would we likely expand? Probably the next day. You're going to see that this asset here, let's go on Euro or GBP here. As you see, it's another two-stage PSP. So you could have came into the day and assumed that this could happen. But we don't have to take this out because we actually have a decent close here. But it just so happened that we did take this out. That's fine as long as you reverse from that high, right? This is something I trade as well. So as you see, that profile opens high first, right? When you see my candle profile video, that's another way we filter price. As you see, it opens high first and then it expands away, right? This is when you see fair value gap support price lower, right? This is another day I traded, but we're not going to get into every single day and every single swing point. I think you guys get it. Hopefully this video helped you guys understand precision swing point. Again, something that I use literally every single day and almost in all of my trades. If you guys enjoyed this and want to see part 2, leave a comment, leave a like, and I will put out part 2 as soon as possible. I am approaching 12K subscribers. That's pretty cool. So I appreciate you guys. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. So I will catch you guys later. Peace.